Welcome back to the Exalted Podcast. This morning I have with me my new friend, Yvette Walker, and I'm so excited to just chat with her this morning and bring you her story. She is the founder of Positively Joy Ministries, and don't we need more of that in the world? So welcome, Yvette. So nice to have you.
Thank you so Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to be here and to talk about joy today.
Yes, one of my favorite subjects. So take me back to how Positively Joy started.
hmm So I have always been a believer.
Mm-hmm.
Always went to church. I was raised Catholic. Went to Catholic high school. Continued going to church. But we grow up and we get a little bit older and we start getting interested in our career. And I moved around a lot for my career. And so I would go to different cities. I'm a former journalist right now. I'm an educator. And I would go to different cities to work at different newspapers and websites. And each time, you had to find a church home.
Yeah.
And so there was always, like a little bit of a break in between trying to get back into
Right.
a place where iron sharpened iron, right? And so,
Yeah.
but I never stopped believing. There was a time though, just marriage and everything, where I just felt that I had faith, but my faith was empty.
Sure.
I believed, but I kind of call it like sleepwalking or being numb in
Yeah.
my faith.
Yeah.
And so I knew there was something missing, but didn't know what, because I believe in Jesus and I love him and know that he loves me. So what else could there be, right? But what I didn't realize is I really needed to do more than believe. I needed to kind of be a seeker. I needed to go out kind of seeking him and understand exactly the role he wanted to play in my life, the message that he had for my life. So over time, like I knew stuff was missing. And there was this one moment where I went to church with my husband and I just was very sad that I felt like I couldn't hear God's voice. That's another part of my
Mm-hmm.
testimony. When I was a little girl in Catholic school, we went to church a lot and I was
Yeah.
there in the church feeling like that, it was like such a solace being in that church, and I could hear him clearly as a
Yeah.
girl. But
Mm-hmm.
as I grew up, I stopped hearing that voice. And so I was at church that day with my husband and I come out crying and he was like, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I can't hear God's voice anymore." And then he said something that turned out to be, I think, pretty amazing, but I didn't get it at the time. He said, "Don't you think you just did?" In the fact that I
Mm-hmm.
was so overcome, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
continued through some more, and I happened to go on a retreat with the amazing Christian singer and songwriter. Oh my goodness, I'm going to forget her name just when I'm talking about it. We'll come back to that.
That's
You may
okay.
need to
That's okay.
you may need to edit this. Oh my goodness, how did I forget her? Rita Springer, of course. Okay, let me say
Rita
that again if
Springer.
you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And then I went on and then I went on a retreat with the amazing singer-songwriter Rita Springer. It was called Dive. And while I was there, I had a breakthrough. We were there, we were doing an exercise where we were supposed to quiet ourselves and open ourselves to God's voice. And during this exercise, he made himself known to me again. And
Mm.
I was just so happy and so excited. After that, that was in August of 2019. After that, things started happening. I mean, like boom, 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 really quick. I
Yeah.
came home. I immediately started writing essays. I write Christian music. I'm not musical, but I write lyrics.
Sure.
I'd never done that before. I'd never written a song before. So I started writing Christian music.
So it's like he
Some of
woke something up in your spirit, like a new
Oh, for
gifting.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And those early essays became my devotional called Whispering in His Ear.
Love it.
I have actually had songs that have been put to music now with a songwriter partner that I have, Ricky Ambergy, and some other amazing musicians.
Yeah.
Um, and and of course, the podcast was born of all of this. It took a year before the podcast happened, but that was in May of 2020, of course, during the pandemic. But I really stem it back to that awakening.
Yeah.
Again, believer all my life, but there was something that woke me up. And so now I have the podcast and I have an online ministry I have a Facebook group where we kind of do life together and encourage each other. And all of this just happened because, as I believe, you have to open yourself to his prompting.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think it's just such a testament to, like, just because we're a believer our whole life doesn't mean that that's just like where it stops. We have to continue to lean in and pursue him more. And there's always more. Like, he always has more for us. But if we're not leaning in, then, he's not gonna deliver. So tell me about positively. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just real quick, I feel so blessed that he even allowed me to realize something was missing.
Yeah.
Because I think you can just live your life and think everything is fine. You kind of live, not any real highs or lows even. You're just kind of living your life kind of on an even keel, which is, that's not a bad thing for tragedy not to happen, right?
Right.
But I think you could have lived that life without realizing that there could be more. So I think that's a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about Positively Joy's mission. Are you showing other believers, or maybe even non-believers, how to have more joy in their life? Is that part of your mission? Like, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's definitely the mission. And over time, God has revealed really what the mission is. So again, started in May of 2020, middle of the pandemic. I knew I wanted to do a podcast. And in my head, it was going to be a podcast. It wasn't even going to be faith-filled at all. It was just going to be a podcast on beauty and stereotypes and hair. That's what it was going to be about, which is actually pretty interesting. But God there was a presence who told me, no,
yeah,
you're going to have a podcast, but it's not going to be on any of that. It's going to be on joy. And I said, okay, yes, Lord, because that's what you say. But I really didn't understand what it meant or what he wanted to do. Over time, it has been revealed to me. But I will tell you this: the very first episode of when I had a guest was a Christian COVID survivor. Now, remember, at that time, we didn't know really anything about COVID. We didn't know what it was going to mean. And as Christians, it was scary, but we had to have faith that it was going to be okay. And so my very first episode was on a COVID Christian survivor, and just how she handled being ill. Again, today it doesn't sound like much, but back then it was incredibly scary because we didn't know. And so I think with that guest, and in the very beginning, I had kind of a combination of interview show and solo show. Primarily, I have an interview show now. I love talking to people. I love interviewing guests better than hearing my own voice all the time. So that's what I primarily do now. But if you go back and listen to some of the earlier episodes, that first episode was on a Christian COVID survivor, who I happen to know and who is a very faith-filled woman. Yeah. And she emulates joy. I mean, she really does. So as I said, over time, what he has revealed to me is to help people understand what real joy is. One thing we say on the show is that joy is not a feeling, it's faith. We weren't created to be happy all the time. God didn't promise that we were going to be happy all the time. He promised that he would be with us. He would walk with us through everything. And also this idea of joy, it is a divine joy. It's not happiness. It's not laughing all the time. That's a human joy. What he wants us to understand is right there in John chapter 15, underneath the vine and the branches. If you go down a little bit, you'll get to verse 9, where he talks about, if you abide in his love, dwell, live in his love, and do the Father's will, then we will be filled with the only joy that will complete us, that will fill us. That's different than just thinking like you're going to be happy all the time. That's real joy. Yeah. And so that's the message that, we try to get across on the Positively Joy podcast.
That's really good. That's really good. So what advice would you have for someone who's listening to this, who maybe feels like they've lost their joy and they're really seeking that? What advice would you have on what they could do to just seek more joy from the Lord?
And I think that that's where I was kind of in the beginning of this process of this seeking. It really is a seeking process. One thing that I did was really get back in the Bible. Now, remember, I'd been going to church every Sunday, never stopped, but my faith wasn't one to really jump in the word.
Yeah.
Now, there are many faiths that do, and that's great. And if you're already in the word, you are halfway there.
Yeah.
But for me, I really wasn't. And so a couple of things, he just revealed so much to me. So number one, he revealed a crafting called Bible journaling. I'd never heard of it. It's pretty famous now, but it's where people use their Bible to journal and create artwork in the Bible. Now, before people get horrified, you have your study Bible, and then you have another Bible that you journal in.
Yeah.
I had never heard of it, and I knew I wanted to get back in the Bible, and I thought, oh, this is interesting because I like scrapbooking and things like that. It's kind of akin to that. But in doing so, you read the word, you have to understand the application, and then you create the artwork. That really helped me jump back in the word in a way that I'd never been my entire life. And so that was one thing that he revealed to me. I mean, I was just on YouTube one day and I'm like, what's this? Bible journaling? I never heard of it. It's amazing how he would just reveal these things to you, even when you're not expecting it. So first of all, get back into your word, jump in the word. And if you're already in the word, consider doing more of a study process. Consider journaling. Even if you're not an artist, that's fine. And I'm really not one either. But consider really trying to understand the meaning and the application of what you're reading. You know, there's so many wonderful Bible plans out there. There's lots of ways to do this. So jump in your Bible and see what his word is and see what message he's giving to you. And then that's kind of part two, open yourself to his promptings. So one thing I talk about in my devotional is how I carry him with me everywhere, in the car, the gas station. I mean, just really any random. Because he can reveal things to you. There's one thing that I talk about. I had a really busy morning. I had like 2 back-to-back things to do, which means I had to prepare everything before I left the house. I had a change of clothes. I had everything prepared. I'd done that. Get in the car. I'm about 15 minutes from home, and I realized I've left a bag. And I'm like, how could that happen? I was so prepared. I had literally everything laid out. It was right there. And so I'm like, I'm going to have to turn around and get this. And then I look over at my passenger seat and I see a letter that's sitting on the seat. I'd written this letter about a week ago. I'd meant to mail it, but I've been busy and I hadn't gotten around to mailing it. It's very random, but remember, previously I was a journalist.
Yeah.
And this was during the time when Australia was having all the terrible wildfires.
Yeah.
And someone online had suggested that we send letters of encouragement to the Australian journalists. And so I wrote a couple of letters encouraging these journalists and also encouraging them to be blessed and to understand the blessing that God has. So it was journalism. I mean, I wanted to encourage them in other ways as well, spiritually. And I looked at the letters, I looked at the clock. I just had enough time to get to the post office to mail them. So that meant he disrupted my morning. And the first event I couldn't get to, but I went to the second event and I mailed the letters. Now, I have no idea what kind of impact those letters made, if at all. There's no way for me to know that. But I believe that he wanted to reroute my day that morning to go to the post office.
Right.
So
and nothing.
So I allowed him.
Yeah. And nothing that he ever prompts us to do is ever wasted. So that had an impact, right? You know how important.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good.
Maybe one day up above, we'll know. But
yeah, it's so fun. What about worship? Where does that come into joy? Does that come in anywhere?
Oh, of course. So the time when I was at church and came out crying, I was crying because we were in the middle of worship and I don't remember the song. There are some songs that I do remember that had real impact on me. I don't remember this one, but I remember it was during worship is when I had this real breakdown and I'm crying and just feeling that I was doing something wrong, that that I wasn't worthy enough for him to talk to me anymore, which is, of course, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's when my husband said, "Don't you think he just did?"
Yeah.
And again, I couldn't wrap my mind around that at the time, but now I know just how profound that was. So yes,
Right.
worship is definitely important. I mean, music, God made music. He created music. We have music. There's music in the Bible. There's lyrics in the Bible.
Right. Right.
So, yeah. And there's so much, I think, that we can get out of the beautiful music, the God-inspired music of today. There's so many wonderful songwriters and singers out there who just, who take what God gives them and makes it so beautiful. Okay. And it touches us in ways that just even, praying alone sometimes can't touch us because we're flawed human beings, but somehow music can. Yeah. And music is a prayer. And so I would definitely say, yes, worship, you can profoundly find joy in worship. And I think that's why worship is such an important part of when we do go to church and when we do get in that community of believers and learn and have all that.
Yeah, I brought that up because that's one of the ways that when I'm not feeling joy or when things are heavy for me, that's one way I can shift like the atmosphere in my home or even in my heart, is just that worship is such a big part of my life. So I love that too. So any last final thoughts, Yvette, for anyone listening? Anything you want to leave them with today?
Yeah. Well, so I would love for people to go to my website, positivelyjoy.com, and get a free resource called Bigger, Better Faith, 5 Ways to Choose Joy, because it is a choice. God gives us joy. He makes it available to us, but we have to choose to go get it. And Amen. So I talk about how to make time, because we're always so busy, how to actually make a space in your home to spend time with him. And so that's available to you. Obviously, there's links to the podcast, which I hope is very encouraging. Again, mostly interviews of people with amazing stories to tell and how they found joy. And right now we're recording to talk about spiritual growth for the next season.
Love it.
So yeah, would love for you to check that. And if you're interested, I actually have a devotional series, Whispering in His Ear, which is the devotional I mentioned that he began to give me the words for. And then there is a companion study guide that goes with it. And that's available on Amazon, but you can see that obviously on the website as well. And if there's anyone out there who is looking for a speaker, I'd be happy to talk with you about that.
Perfect. I will link all of that in the show notes, because I think this is just such an important message, especially after the last couple of years that we've come out of. People have forgotten how to be in joy. And it's truly a gift of the Spirit. Like, it's something that the Lord gifted to us. And so we have access to it all the time. So I love it. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing this important work with the world. I love it. So thank you, Yvette.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the important work that you're doing. We're all a big village. We're working for him.
Amen. Amen. Thanks. We'll see you next time.